Doing a little troubleshooting.
Did we miss anything?
No, you're good. You're here on time this time. We will get started here in a little bit, folks. Okay, is everybody ready to get started?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for coming out today. I know it's like getting a little warm, so this is a nice, cool place to come hang out, learn about mushrooms, take a mushroom trip around the world, right? So yeah, thank you, Mika, for inviting us, Central Texas Mycological Society. And she's put out a bunch of books that you can check out here at this branch. And there's some really good ones, some new ones, the new Peter McCoy. So yeah, check those out. They're out on they're on the table there. And if you get thirsty anytime during the talk, I brought some of the my reishi hibiscus tea, reishi ginger hibiscus. Yeah, get some. And there's some little cups back there if you don't have your own. But yeah, so how many people, is this your first Central Texas Mycology event? Yeah. Oh, good. Yay. All right. Exciting. So yeah, we're a pretty new organization and we curate a lot of different kinds of events to further the education of mycology. So everything from art type classes to classes on ecology and how different species interact with fungi. We do mushroom walks when we get rain. And there's 3 in East Texas this month. One is happening right now as well with mycologist David Lewis. And we have his field guide. He helped write the most recent field guide. So it's the light blue book there in the back. So if you're really interested in wanting to learn more about what species of mushrooms grow in this area, it's definitely the best guide to get. And so definitely check that out. And yeah, so we have a couple events coming up. We're kicking off our mobile mycology, more of a community lab. And there's going to be an event in Austin and also in San Antonio. And it's really kind of a phase of gathering information about how the community sees themselves interacting with fungi in a lab. And so we want to hear what you want to learn about mycology, everything from just being able to look at spores and help identify or learn how to identify to doing DNA, things like that. And so we eventually want to get it to the point where we can go to schools, libraries, and be able to set up and do more kind of more of the STEM kind of aspect of mycology. So the science and technology aspect. So if you are interested in that and helping out in any capacity or just want to share ideas, come out and see us this coming, let's see, it's next week at Annie's Day and Night. And so we have a calendar on our website that you can see all of the events coming up. But today we're going to talk about mushrooms and art, and I'll share just a little bit about myself. These are some of my Melfies here, and I'm one of the organizers within Central Texas Mycology. I really focus on the communication side and the education side. And I used to work in tech and sort of got out of that grind about 8 years ago. And so I'm sort of slowly becoming more and more feral as the days go by. Being able to spend time outside in the garden and doing things like foraging. And so these are some of the fun photos that I've taken just over the last several years. Some of the mushrooms we'll be talking about today. And does anybody recognize any of these species? Want to yell out any names? Morel, yeah. Chanterelle, yeah, we've been finding these here in the forest. That was one of my biggest hauls right there. Amanita, yeah. Amanita muscaria. We'll talk about that one today. Any other ones? Destroying angel, yeah, one of my favorite mushrooms. The first one I ever knew because it had my name. And that's what like a little person would be excited about.
The Caesar?
Yeah, that's actually the edible boletes in Mexico. So that was really high, 12,000 feet in the mountains in Mexico. So yeah, all right. Top left, this one? Top left. Oh yeah, the one that the very first one. That's the destroying angel. And so that's also an Amanita mushroom. I included the Amanitas of North America too back there if you want to thumb through and take a look at some of the different species, but they've been popping up all over lately with the rain and that rain last night. Who got rain last night? I know we've had scattered storms, but that was exciting waking up. I love waking up to thunder. I used to not until I got into mushrooms. I'm like, yes, it's raining. And we'll learn about, so we're going to learn about mushrooms as people have seen them all over the globe. And so I put this talk together about 3 years ago. It's almost 3 years now. And so a lot has changed since then. And when I was kind of foraging all over the internet, looking at all these like crazy conspiracies and all kinds of rabbit holes I was going down, I couldn't believe how much I was finding. And I had to kind of pare it down to like 2 presentations. And so I'm going to do the second part here on July 8th as well. So that's another Saturday at 2. So we're only going to get to basically the 1600s. That's about how far I got like going down this train here. And so I just want to preface things too that it was like a way for me to kind of organize all this disparate information. And there's a lot of things written from like the Western lens too. And as we all know, there's a lot of erasure. There's a lot of things that are held sacred that we don't know. And so I was really excited to see this week that one of the organizations, it's a global nonprofit called the Fungi Foundation, which you all should follow and keep up with what they're doing. They're Juliana Farici and people that she works with. They're the first country in the world to actually protect fungi in the way that we protect other species of life. And so they're doing some really amazing things there. And we hope that we can continue to, yes. Yeah, Fungi Foundation. Fungi Foundation. So they came out with like guidelines for ethnomycology. So like while I don't consider Chile. Yeah. So sorry, I'll speak up a little bit too. I'm kind of a low speaker, so I'm gonna go deeper in my lungs. So as I was saying, like a lot of this comes from like a Western lens. And as we know, there is a lot of people kind of doing ethnomycology, not using the best practices or being ethical about it. So I want everybody to kind of take everything I share like with a grain of salt because it's through that lens. And hopefully with this foundation and some of the things that they're doing, trying to create more ethical guidelines for how we interact with especially like Indigenous people that have held on to their practices, like we can have better relationships and understanding, and also respect that some of that information is held sacred and not for everyone to just go and consume, which is kind of what happens today. But we will be doing an event in September with an ethnomycologist that helped put together these guidelines. And it's going to be on the sort of use of psilocybin and Amanita muscaria, like its use throughout history by indigenous groups. And we're also going to have a Mazatec historian. He's going to join us as well from Oaxaca, Mexico. And he's going to share some of the challenges and things that he's had trying to rebuild his community. So I'll get into that in this talk in the second part in July, and talk a little bit about some of the challenges that have come up with these sacred traditions being kind of made publicly available to everyone.
You said that was in September. Was that in Austin?
That's going to be online. Yeah, because the ethnomycologist is from Brazil, and the historian, he lives in the mountains in Mexico. So it's going to be a donation-based event where anybody that's benefited from these medicines or just wants to support and contribute to helping restore, it's going to be like a reciprocity type event. So to help restore this community in Mexico, that where this sort of sacred mushroom or the psychedelic or magic mushrooms, like where that knowledge was kept and then eventually made its way to the Western world. So in the modern context too, as you'll see, like these mushrooms have been used all over the world. So yeah, so as I go through the slides, you'll see that early visual languages were found all over the world. And as we interpret the art, you will see that these mushrooms were sacred and they were central components of religious ceremonies of early ancestors. You'll notice that these art and rituals have many parallels on both sides of the globe. And here are a few of the mushrooms we'll be talking about in the presentation. We've already identified a few of those. So I'm going to move across the globe in somewhat of a timeline. And note I'll be using modern naming conventions of countries just for clarity and brevity. And sometimes I'll jump around the timeline and throw in like kind of more modern anecdotes about things that relate. And so digging into this art and history, it was really a great way for me to connect with our ancestors, considering that fungi and mycelium are foundational to our species. So they've lived through all the mass extinction events and even evolved through mass extinction. So I hope that it inspires everyone to be even more interested in the fungi kingdom. So we're going to start off in India. And so the earliest rock art depiction of mushrooms was estimated to be about 40,000 years ago in eastern India, where the cow is sacred. And so psilocybin cyanosis, shown here, is commonly found in the Indus Valley, where these petroglyphs were found. And so these are trace depictions. So you can imagine like what wear and tear weather would do to a rock that's like that long, that old. So you can kind of see what might be like mushroom people, or perhaps like a tribal elder. And as time went on, mushrooms continued to appear in religious art, and above are ceramic female fertility figurines from the Indus Valley from around the 3rd to 2nd century. And they depicted multiple Amanita muscaria mushrooms in the headdress of the earth goddess. And so the Rig Veda, which is one of the world's oldest religious Sanskrit texts, refers to the legendary food of the gods known as soma over 100 times. And we are told that drinking soma provides great physical strength to pick up the earth itself, the power of flight to go beyond the limits of heaven and earth. And we know that soma was a focal point of Vedic religions. and that the gods drank soma to make them immortal. And the contents of this drink is debated by many scholars to contain the mushroom psilocybin, perhaps ergot, cannabis, all kinds of things. There's a bunch of different plants. And so the exact recipe is not known per se. And so the Rig Veda describes soma as a small red plant having no leaves, lacking both roots and blossoms, but having a stem that is juicy and meaty. So yeah, there's a plant called somalata, or the common name is moon creeper. And that seems to be like the psychotropic ethniogenic plant that a lot of people have kind of right at this moment are like agreed upon is the plant. And so this is a figurine of Buddha under a mushroom. And according to legend, Buddha eventually reaches nirvana or enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, but only after he dies from eating a poisonous meal. And so it's debated whether Buddha's last meal was mushrooms or a wild boar. I'm like, what about both? That'd be good together. Not dying, but the mushroom part before. So here are several more figurines of Buddha. Again, we see a mushroom replacing the Bodhi tree that is considered the tree of life. And above is a few more depictions of Shiva, the auspicious one, and the supreme being in Hindu religion who creates, protects, and transforms the universe. There are many depictions of this goddess with what appear to be an Amanita muscaria mushroom. And so here are a few murals from ancient India from the 17th century depicting shamans wearing clothing that's encoded with the colors of the Amanita muscaria. We're going to see that come up later in a more modern context too. So now we're going to go to the North Pole, approximately 10,000-year-old petroglyphs in Far East Siberia. And so again, we see figures with mushrooms on their heads. We can make out not only the hemispherical mushroom caps of Amanita muscaria above the females, but you can see the psilocybin mushroom-headed males whose cap are more like psilocybin and have a slight point to it. And so Amanita muscaria is told to be toxic for the most part in the West, and that's slowly been changing. I've seen it change just in the last few years. And in Siberia, they are still consumed by various tribes during their rituals. And observing this sacred ritual has been difficult for curious Westerners. We now know that Amanita muscaria can be consumed by drying the mushroom to remove the neurotoxin, iobotenic acid, and converting it to muscimol, which is a deliriant. And this is an illustration of a shaman in Siberia created by a Dutch explorer, Nicholas Whitson, in the late 17th century. And it is the earliest known depiction to appear in Europe, and it popularized the term shaman. And so just take notes of kind of the physical characteristics, the antler horns and other things. So that's going to come up later too. So the 18th and 19th century travel writers and scientists from the West described the ritual. The most famous account was by Oliver Goldsmith in 1762. And I'm going to quote verbatim, so I'm going to sound really weird. The poorest sort who love mushrooms to distraction as well as the rich, but cannot afford it to the first hand, post themselves on these occasions around the huts of the rich and watch the ladies and gentlemen as they come down to pass their liquor, also known as urine, and hold the wooden bowl to catch the delicious fluid, very little altered by filtration, being still strongly tinctured with the intoxicating quality. Of this they drink with the utmost satisfaction, and thus they get as drunk and as jovial as their betters. It's exciting. So reindeer also consume Amanita muscaria, and so writers reported that reindeer urgently sought after human urine, and this greatly helped in the domestication of the reindeer in this region of the world. And this modern shaman here is shown here, watch their reindeer's behavior after eating the fly agaric mushroom. And on one of the side effects of ingesting is the sensation of flying. And the Siberian people also began using dried venison to enhance their journeys of expanded awareness. So their spirit journeys were not about escaping reality or getting, quote, high. Instead, they used the journey to seek wisdom and knowledge and to honor the spirit animals, plants, and the natural world that gave them life. And so by connecting with the spiritual aspect of their world, they gathered information that helped them learn when to hunt, when to gather, when to move to other locations, and how to treat illness of body and soul. And so here we see a 7th generation Shama, Tatiana Yurkachin, and she also wears the colors of the Amanita muscaria. And so there's even some ethnomycologists that have gone and documented her, and you can watch videos of her online. And so here's some more examples of their clothing from the different tribes in Siberia. And on the right is the full uniform with the horns and the facial covering of the ribbons. And so by studying these traditions, a lot of people have kind of they believe that these ancient rituals eventually were appropriated into the myth of Santa Claus and the more Judeo-Christian holiday that is more about consuming material objects rather than communing with nature. And everything from the location to the timing of the winter solstice, the reindeer flying, the red and white colors, finding gifts under a conifer tree, the rosy cheeks, which is a side effect of consuming Amanita muscaria, going down the chimney, which is how the shamans enter the huts in the wintertime because of the high snow, to placing red ornaments on the tree, which is how the Siberians dried the mushroom to remove the neurotoxin. So these are all of the different things. And I'm going to show just a short video. Let's see if it'll play. From BBC. This is a couple years old now.
In the Arctic Circle, this fungus also has magical associations with animals. Fly agaric contains hallucinogenic chemicals and is a favorite food of reindeer. For thousands of years, the lives of reindeer and Sami people have been entwined. Fly agaric was important to both of them. In autumn, reindeer seek out the mushrooms, even under an early fall of snow. No one knows whether the reindeer are affected, but in the past, Sami shamans took fly agaric in their visionary rituals.